just put a few things on here because there's so much information. Maybe I'll just put the highlights on there. Today is UUA UN Sunday. Following World War II, the United Nations was founded on October 24, 1945. The UN is a global association of governments that facilitates cooperation in international law, security, economic development, and social equality. With aims to protect human rights and achieve world peace, it is a center for governments to communicate and develop strategies to reach these ends. Since its founding, October 24th has been called United Nations Day. In 1971, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution recommending that the day be observed as a holiday by member states. When the scourge of war heavily on hearts and minds following World War II, 51 countries met in San Francisco to create the United Nations, where they drafted and signed its charter. With these 51 countries signed the charter, they became member states of the United Nations and committed their governments and people to maintain international peace and security, as well as the charter's other purposes and principles. When states became members of the United Nations, they agreed to accept the many obligations of the UN Charter. Much of the UN's work sets normative frameworks which governments must take upon themselves to implement. One of the most important purposes in the Charter to remember when thinking about the purpose of the United Nations is the fourth one, which says to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations in the attainment of these common ends. A common misunderstanding is that the UN is a director of action or change, or that it has power over states. Much like elected or appointed officials in a city or province draft legislation in the interest of their local constituents. UN delegates from different countries deliberate law and legislation at the international level. Governments draft, debate, and vote for or against treaties, conventions, or action plans discussed at the UN. The entirety of the budget for the UN is financed by dues and voluntary contributions from member states. There are now 193 states in the United Nations. The newest member state is the Republic of South Sudan, July 14, 2011. In addition, the Holy See and the State of Palestine have observer status, meaning they have speaking rights but no voting rights. Working with such diversity of people requires a large full-time translation team. The UN works in 6 official languages: Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish. In celebration of this annual event, the Unitarian-Universalist United Nations Office, the UNO, invites congregations and individual Unitarian Universalists to deepen their understanding of the United Nations by devoting one service in October to reaffirming the connection between Unitarian Universalist principles and vital issues dealt with at the UN. The theme for 2016 is the colors of inequality, cost, and consequences. And their statement says, whereas, as Unitarian Universalists, we recognize the inherent worth and dignity of all people and covenant to work toward equality in human relations. We are all part of the United Nations, which functions collaboratively to further the development of all countries. UN Sustainable Development Goal 10 calls for reduced inequalities within and among countries. 1% of the world's population controls 50% of the global wealth, and legal systems favor the status quo. People suffer unfairly in the world where our goals of community should include peace, liberty, and justice for all, not just for a select few. We have witnessed inequality in our community systems, including but not limited to the judicial, the personal, and the educational. People are often born into such inequality and lack the means to change their own circumstances. Personal and systematic bias has led to massive injustice for people in historically looted communities, including youth. Issues such as climate change, mass incarceration, solitary confinement, and poverty disproportionately affect those already disenfranchised globally. Every individual and social group has unique needs that should be respected and addressed in ways that help them grow and approach them with dignity. We therefore resolve We therefore resolve to raise awareness about the overall goals of the United Nations, including humanitarianism, respect for universal human rights, and diplomacy through campaigns, protests, and collaboration. Stand in solidarity with individuals and communities who are experiencing the effects of income inequality. Utilize our positions of privilege to engage our communities and call them to action. Call our congregations to partner with organizations that are already working to identify and address the root cause of income inequality. Work actively to create globally aware communities that promote fair living wages and equal opportunities for groups facing bias and systematic oppressions. Lobby and use other methods to change policy and influence legislation in our governments. Educate intergenerational allies, especially youth, to continue to fight for equality. Remember the importance of the human story and lift up those stories in our communities. As part of the global UU story, Unitarians and Universalists around the world work for social justice causes they care about. Here are just a few examples of the many issues related to economic inequality that you may want to use to promote action. Increase the minimum wage. The minimum wage currently in place in most U.S. states and Canadian provinces are not living wages. Because of the minimum wage is so low, many people are forced to work multiple jobs in order to survive at the most basic level, leaving them no time or energy to spend with their families and friends or taking care of themselves properly. By raising minimum wage, more people will have a chance to move up in the world economically and socially. Consider supporting an existing Raise the Wage campaign in your area with a group from your congregation. Protect our planet. The effects of global climate change have already begun intensifying inequality levels worldwide, overwhelmingly impacting poor communities across the globe, causing droughts, floods, extreme weather, receding coastlines, and more. Wealthy nations have some ability to hold back the consequences of these disasters, but small developing countries do not. It is crucial that we take action to make sure that our countries live up to and exceed the commitments made in Paris at the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference in 2015. Remove private money from U.S. elections. The current laws in the United States allowing corporations to contribute to election campaigns means that politicians are held captive to corporate interests that influence the policies they do and do not support. This sabotages the democratic process by giving wealthy people and corporations a huge say in the success or failure of public policies, while those with less wealth have next to no influence. One way to get involved is through Move to Amend, a coalition calling for constitutional amendment to state that inalienable rights belong to human beings only. Criminal justice reform. Prison systems in the United States contribute to cycles of intergenerational poverty, preventing those in historically looted communities from breaking through social and economic barriers. By increasing rehabilitation, education, and treatment programs in prisons, as well as improving and expanding reentry programs upon release, can contribute to breaking these cycles. One way to counter the stigma and barriers faced by previously incarcerated job seekers is through Ban the Box, a campaign to remove the question about criminal record from initial hiring applications. There are many resources to further your knowledge of the UN and the UUA work that is being done. For those who are interested, I have printed out a list of documentaries, films, and videos that are available for you to view. I'll leave them up here. Take a sheet if you're interested. There's lots of information, videos, documentaries. Very, very interesting. And I have on the UN and UUA website, there are a lot of videos about what things the UUA is doing. But I picked a few of them just to take a quick look at them.
Interesting music choice.
Yeah. In 1993, a small group of dedicated volunteers met to answer the call of the Transylvanian Unitarians who were just emerging from 45 years of communist dictatorship. They founded the Unitarian-Universalist Partner Church Council and elected the Reverend Dr. Leon Hopper as their first president. Over the past 20 years, The mission of the UU Partner Church Council has evolved from saving Transylvania to fostering true partnerships between North American UU churches and Unitarian and UU congregations around the world. From charity to parity. Today, we celebrate over 200 partnerships in 11 countries. We are living our sixth principle. International partnership is about celebrating life together. We work together, some harder than others. We play together. We worship together. We celebrate life's milestones together. And in between, we take time just to be together. Because that's what good friends do. Partnership transforms lives.
Getting to know the UUs of the Philippines is a life-changing experience that has deepened our faith.
For us, it's about connection. Meeting with our partners was better than anything we could have imagined. We laughed, we cried, we loved it.
I went because I wanted to visit some of the places where Unitarian history had been made. But the real revelation to me were the Transylvanians. Their loving hospitality and graciousness I should hope to emulate. The things they value are mostly what I value. And in a ruined citadel on top of a mountain in Deva, when I saw the villagers' visible response to the story of the martyrdom of Francis David, I felt, yes, these are my people too.
Partnership transforms congregations.
Our partner church in Uganda, Africa, has an orphanage that they support for AIDS orphans whose parents have died of AIDS. Many of these children are infected as well. And being in relationship with this church has allowed our children and members of our congregation to be connected to this really important work and doing worldwide work to help on a grassroots level those most in need around the world. And this has been a really important part of our partner church relationship.
I served in Concord, a congregation that was fairly well-to-do, really could buy things that they wanted. Those who went with us to Transylvania, to Seke Karister, they began to appreciate what money cannot buy in the hospitality of the people who would give their tablecloth off the table if you admired it. That transforms people, and that transforms a church.
Partnership transforms lives. Let it transform yours.
If you want to see any more of those videos, they're on the UUA site. Just go under UN Sunday. And there's a lot of them from different places all over the world where the UUA is helping out. So, and like I said, there's more information down here as well. And hopefully somebody wants to get involved somewhere and help where they can. Please stand and sing with me, 155.
There's no intro for this one today.
We got this.
So